do, and he'll show off the key features of our product. So we're focused on really 3 tenets of business intelligence. It's a crowded market, admittedly. There's lots of tools situation. So we want to make it clear that when we're building technology, when we're building a company, we want it to be focused on these 3 things, and that is we want the tool to be very intuitive and easy to use. Business intelligence has gotten a kind of a bad rap over the last 20 or 30 years, primarily because of the complexity of the user interface, the complexity of the interaction with the data. So we want to build tools that are intuitive not only for data analysts, those that kind of know what they're doing with the data, but we also want to make tools that are intuitive for those casual users. Just, you know, you get a little bit of background noise, so I'm giving you maybe you could put yourself. So part of our architecture is very focused on making that, whatever that visualization is, whatever that report, that insight, we want to make that embeddable. And that's where our architecture comes into play. A lot of BI tools can be embedded inside another application, whether it's a portal, whether it's part of your email system, whether it's part of a homegrown application that's built within your environment. But Jaspersoft has done their embedded architecture so that that is very easy to do. And we have found over the years that the real insight and the real kind of reason why folks are not adopting BI as much as they can is because it's never in the context for the user. The end user typically has to switch context. They're working on within a CRM application or some other tool. They want to sort of they typically have to switch over somewhere else to another tool, another interface, capture whatever it is, that data that they need for that decision, and then go back to that user interface, that original. We think a better world is when that data is combined with that application or is presented at the same time as the users in that application. And so that's where embedded BI comes into play, and that's one of the key benefits of integrating BI as close as possible to the user's workspace. So our architecture is very well made to do that integration, to do that embedding without a lot of cost and expense and maintenance. And then lastly, we want to make sure that everything we do is affordable. I mean, ultimately, we started our company with open source as our sort of mindset, and we want to ensure that we're making software affordable and pervasive. We don't want to just focus on 1 or 2 users within an organization. We want everybody to get insight, and that's where our scale of our licensing and subscription model makes that a reality. So as a company, just for those that are new to Jaspersoft, so we're based in San Francisco. We've got about 200 employees worldwide. We've seen a very steady growth as a company over the last several years, in spite of some challenges in the BI market. So the market itself is growing at about 7 to 8% worldwide, and we're seeing, essentially 4 to 5x that within our own business. So admittedly, we're not as big as some of those big, the larger mega vendors out there, but we've got a solution that's hitting a particular problem, and we're going to talk about what those use cases are in just a moment. Our ecosystem is quite extensive. We have a number of folks that are part of our community of developers and users. We power literally over 175,000 applications. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we do have an open source product that allows for you to take our technology and embed it inside your system for a variety of reasons. But in spite of that, we'd also have about 2,000 commercial customers. So that means these are folks that are subscribing to our product year after year to get support and to get more advanced features that are not available in that open source edition. And then our partner community is very vibrant. We have some, what I would consider some leading partners that are really changing the IT landscape, Amazon being one of them, Google being another, and of course Red Hat. These are partnerships that provide solutions that fit various requirements, various technology requirements. Amazon, for example, is a great partner of ours that offers our product on an hourly basis. We're the only BI vendor in the marketplace that's doing that. And then, of course, we get recognized by industry folks all over the place. It's nice to see, since I've been at Jaspersoft coming up on 5 years, is that we've really matured in their eyes, and through customer deployments and technology improvements, that we're now recognized as a legitimate, not only capability-wise, but also a threat to the incumbents, the folks, the big mega vendors that are out there. We're going to talk about a couple of use cases. Our capabilities are fairly, in terms of the types of tools and the types of visualizations that we want to support, we are very broad. So we have reports. We have a lot of ability to build interactive reports, but also pixel perfect. So if you're a financial services company, healthcare, insurance, pixel perfect can be a very real deal. The report has to be laid out exactly as designed because it's part of some other workflow or process. But then we can also make those pixel perfect reports fully interactive. So that means they're viewable online via a tablet, phone or website, and you can completely interact with that report. So that combination is unique with Jaspersoft versus some of the other technologies out there. Dashboarding, of course, is a very important way to measure your business in an at-a-glance way. Lots of dials, not lots of visuals, lots of charts that you can present and allow the user then to drill and explore from there. So we'll show you how our dashboard solution behaves and looks in just a moment. Analytics, a very important capability, certainly in this new style of analytics that we've been seeing over the last few years, which is a visual discovery. So this is using charting, using a picture to show your data so that you can interact with it. So we have a full analytics suite. It comes with a in-memory engine for fast performance so that you can interact with that data, slice and dice, do calculations, filter that data so that once you find what it is you're looking for, then you can save that insight and share it with your organization. So that's also something that we're going to show off today in terms of how that experience looks and behaves. And then lastly, we have a full-fledged data integration product that allows you to combine your data from a variety of sources, and it doesn't really matter what that source is. It could be homegrown, it could be a relational system like Oracle or SQL Server. It can also be big data. So if somebody's thinking about big data, this is a tool that allows them to combine disparate sources to create a data warehouse, and that is something that is part of our portfolio. So usually when folks start with the BI system, specifically with Jaspersoft, they have to connect to their data. So we're going to talk about our connectivity strengths, and because it is a big part of our message. So we have three sort of generic or general connectivity techniques that we're going to talk about. And each technique you can use individually, or you can combine them as required. So the first we'll talk about is our native access. So across the top, or maybe I should start from the bottom, is your data sources. So you've got data, and I've given just an example of some of these down below. It can be relational, non-relational. It can be, in some cases, an XML file. It can be an analytic database. It really, the strength is we can connect to just about anything, and it doesn't have to be through JDBC. It can be through a variety of custom interfaces. JNDI is also a very popular way to connect to data. So once you connect to that data, this is native access. So that means you're not moving the data around. You're just pointing our tool directly at your data, and you want to report, run a query against that, and pull that into our engine to work with. One of the beauties of our native connectors is that when you're working with data that's non-traditional, so Hadoop, Mongo, and even if you're not working on these systems today, eventually, most likely, all of you will at some point in time. It's just becoming a matter of maturity for those tools and technologies. So the beauty of our native access is that you can now connect and then work with that query language that's part of that underlying system. So if it's a relational data, the SQL interface is fine, and you can run your SQL statements, and those are going to run natively against that engine. But if you're running a big data engine, that's a bigger challenge for a lot of BI tools. Running a native Mongo query on Mongo through a BI tool, not a lot of tools can do that. And we know that because we do our due diligence on other tools that can provide this feature. So that native access is kind of a big deal. It's the fastest way to get information out of your system. So this is one of the big benefits of Jaspersoft, is just the vast variety of ways to connect your data, and then the speed that you're getting your results from. So once you get that query back to Jaspersoft, now we can work with that information so we can present it in the way that you need it, whether it's through a visual analysis discovery tool, whether it's in a dashboard or in a report. It's kind of, this is the first step. And the reason why you would do this is because you want real time. You want fast access to the data exactly as it sits in its state within that operational system. But we recognize that that's not always the best tool or approach, because not everybody can just directly hammer a operational schema with queries. So there's other technologies that allow you to do protect that system, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The next step is using our semantic layer. So this is very similar to native in that we're connecting directly to that that engine, whether it's big data or relational, it doesn't matter. The beauty of this step is now you're creating a semantic layer on top of that access. So what you're doing is part of that query includes information about the data itself. So what you're allowed to do is create a metadata layer. So if you're familiar with business objects or Cognos, this is a very similar kind of the universe layer, if you will. And that metadata layer provides a number of wonderful services, like you can rename fields of the database. A lot of times when developers are building an application, they're not thinking about a business user that ultimately is going to be reporting on that data. So usually those column fields and table names are very difficult to understand. So you can rename those so that they're more intuitive and understandable. You can define security rules within that data access layer if you'd like. It's also doing some nice caching. So that metadata layer, when it runs its query against the data, and that result set gets pulled into memory, and so that then from that point forward, you're interacting with that data within our engine, and you're no longer pushing additional queries to your underlying database. So this is where you get the advantage of an in-memory engine using our semantic layer. We call those domains, and that's something that Curtis will highlight in just a moment. So the benefit of using our semantic layer is it gives those non-technical users, the folks that really don't understand the ins and outs of the data per se, but it gives them a better view of that information. It makes it more simplified so that a non-technical user can build whatever they need against data source, whether it's a report or they want to do some analysis. So that's something that we can provide against both, again, traditional relational data and non-relational and NoSQL data. And then lastly, we have a nice tool that we call a data federation engine. It's powered by a data virtualization layer. And what this allows you to do is essentially connect to two disparate sources. So you might have an Oracle database, a SQL Server database, or a MySQL, and a Postgres. It kind of doesn't matter. You can connect to both of those databases and join them virtually so that you're not moving data around, creating a data warehouse. And this is a trend that's only getting more popular, especially when we're talking about big data systems that are growing in size, and moving data around is becoming expensive. It's also becoming prohibitively less performant. So people don't like to wait around for data. If they have a question about their data, they don't want to wait till tomorrow to get the answer. They want it right away. So one of the benefits of our data federation engine or support is that you can combine two disparate sources and make them look virtually as one. And then once you combine those sources, then you take advantage of our metadata layer, and to the end user, it looks like a single database, even though maybe underneath it's powered by a SQL Server, and Oracle, or some other types of engines. The end user doesn't care or know. That's a huge benefit benefit for those that want a simplified architecture. Their data requirements are such that the volumes of data and the performance that they can get from a virtualized federated source is really a huge advantage, and it's also less costly, because now you're not talking about an ETL tool, a data warehouse tool. They're the support that comes with that. So very quickly, I'm going to walk through. So the next step, after we go through this, Curtis can show you what it looks like once you connect to the data, and how to work with data. So I don't have any slides on sort of those end user tools, because that's going to be presented by Curtis in his content. So the next step here is we're going to talk about some popular use cases of Jaspersoft and help you get a feel for where we work, how we work, and why do customers choose us. So the first one is a report conversion situation. So this is a very large financial services company in the United States, a global brand, something that we all probably have. Many of us have maybe a card of theirs in our wallets right now. What they wanted to do is transition from their existing reporting platform to something that was lower cost and more open. So they had an initiative to transition their architecture to proprietary systems to more open standards, open systems such as Linux and some of the open source middleware technologies. So their requirements were that ultimately they needed to provide reports that allowed reporting on financial auditing and end-of-day processing and risk management. And the ultimate goal was to improve corporate performance. So they already had a solution in place. It was just that the solution was no longer performing as well, and it was becoming very expensive for them. And they wanted to move to, again, more open systems architecture from a hardware and software perspective. So the challenge for the RFP, if you will, the proposal, was that the query performance was important. They had a lot of transactions happening, and they wanted those reports to be able to return results quickly. And they also didn't want to change the underlying database schema. So that was part of the conversion, was the data can't change. We're not going to remodel it and go through that expense. And they also wanted the ability to present the data exactly how it already was presented, but then also provide some interactivity of those reports. And that was something they were not getting from their prior technology. And then they wanted to be able to monitor the performance of that engine, because that was a part of their sort of SLA to their business units. And then our advantage with this solution, and one of the reasons why they chose, several reasons why they chose Jaspersoft, was first the TCO. They loved the fact that they could get a very robust solution for a lower cost than their current technology. They also liked the simple administration environment. So this was a single server infrastructure footprint for them, and the prior architecture was a multi-server environment that was very expensive and hard to maintain for their team. And they really liked the fact that they could integrate our technology with their open systems architecture. So things like Apache and Tomcat, and again, some of the Linux operating systems, that was something that was really built in and something that we work really well on, because again, of course, we're open source. They wanted also the ability to embed our reports, our technology, into their infrastructure. And that was something that was very easy to do, and something that they couldn't do, even consider, with their prior architecture. So this really opened the door and allowed them to take the next step about how to present these types of reports to their users. And they needed to scale. They wanted to be able to scale to 13,000 reports and about 350 users, and Jaspersoft was able to do that, but also do it quickly. So ultimately, the benefits that they got from this deployment was cost savings. They saved a lot of money on their software and infrastructure. So this was some estimates that they provided to us, and that's something I think they've incurred. It's been a couple years now since this has taken place. So I think that those numbers are probably dramatically improved or higher. But they also got better performance. So the one thing that they were really happy about was they did all of this work and everything went faster. And remember, they didn't change the underlying database schema, so it wasn't like they could tune something over there and get a shortcut from that. No, this was purely Jaspersoft that helped improve the performance. And then lastly, they got better user satisfaction. That had a lot to do with that embeddable component, so they were able to embed it in some new places within their infrastructure. And they also had that better interactivity, so that was something they were not getting in their prior deployment because it was all static. Okay, and I'm going the wrong direction. Let's keep going. So the next use case, a company called Tomax. This is a situation where you've got a smaller retail outfit, so they provide a retail solutions for point-of-sale types of transactions. In this case, it was a consumer food service play. So there was a lot of retail chains, a number of stores. They had a software offering that allowed these retail stores to be managed using their software application. So think of it as a piece retail chains using reporting and analytics. So there's a lot of aggregate take advantage of all of that and have it be powered. Yes.
Mike, sorry about that. We lost you for maybe 10 or 15 seconds there. Can you just go back briefly and sound-wise we lost you there for a minute. If you can
oh, sure.
Go
okay.
back a little
yeah,
bit.
No problem. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Tomax is a retail solutions provider. So they're a technology company. They build software for retail stores. They target mid-market companies, and what they wanted to do was provide a solution for point-of-sale. It was a point-of-sale solution for the food industry market. And so these retailers have a lot of data, a lot of point-of-sale data, and they wanted to provide an analytics solution that could be used both by the retailers and the branch managers as well as the retail executive branch. So this is where we got, we worked with Tomax, the provider, to integrate BI into their solution. So essentially their product was an ERP solution for retailers, and they wanted to bolster that capability with reports and analytics. So they needed a lot of things. They needed the information to be real-time accessible, and they had to be easy to use, because I think about their end users were a lot of folks that were literally on the front lines working with customers in these various retail outfits, and they were not BI professionals, and they didn't want to be trained for a week on how to use a BI tool, so how to be very intuitive. And they also were very focused on their open systems platform. They wanted the technology to be completely open, open source, open sort of technologies. So the challenge for them was that each retailer had unique custom requirements. They wanted a report to look like this, or they wanted the data to be presented like that, and they had different requirements. They had to customize for each retailer, which was a challenge for them. They also had a lot of security integration requirements, so they needed that single sign-on experience to be tightly integrated with their platform, because they already had an identity management solution inside their application. They wanted a low-cost solution. They were not in the business of trying to find a very expensive tool to embed inside their platform. This was selling to the SMB market, and so cost was a huge driver for them. They had lots of data. They had hundreds of reports per site with terabytes of data. So they needed that performance to be quick and reliable and in real time. And so ultimately what the Jaspersoft advantage was, part of it was our platform, the fact that we do have a multi-tenant architecture. And for those that are into the software business and are providing cloud solutions, multi-tenancy is a requirement. It's a way to provide a single installation of Jaspersoft and essentially carving it up into many little tenants so that nobody shares their information with one another, but yet as a management outfit you can support just one instance or one installation of Jaspersoft. They liked the fact that we were all web-based. All of our tools are web available via the browser, so you can design and deploy and interact all just with the browser. They liked the fact that they could integrate with their platform very quickly and easily, including that single sign-on environment. Of course, the fact that it was low cost was a huge driver, and the whole reason why they started with us was because of our affordability. They liked the end result. The end user tools were very intuitive, so they didn't have to train the end users on how to take advantage of the data that was being presented to them. And so the result was a very fast integration. They plugged this into their platform, rolled it out to their end users, all within, I think it was 6 months or something like that, which is amazing when you talk about integration with another technology. The end users were very, very happy with how the data was presented and how fast things were, how responsive the interaction was with the data. And ultimately, they found, we weren't able to secure this from them, but we found that they felt that the operational efficiency improved, so they actually saved some money by cutting costs on various processes that were improved using data. So I'm now going to hand it off to Mangesh, who's going to help give us an overview of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society implementation and the use case that we help support with them.
Great, and thank you so much, Mike. And let me thank both you and Curtis for joining us, today. The three key things that you mentioned earlier on in the presentation, Mike: embeddable, affordable, and self-service BI. Those we believe are the keys to the market at this point. We've worked in this market for a number of years, close to 20 now. And one of the things that I constantly see from our customers, from our prospects, from our partners, is focus on self-service. And how business intelligence or information gets consumed is very, very important as well. And so from that perspective, we have found Jaspersoft products to be a great fit. We like them. We definitely see a lot of use cases where, small, medium, large-size customers could leverage the product itself with sound data management practices around it, because that's also the key. One of the things that we have seen is, if we do not have sound data management practices, pretty soon the BI or the reporting solution gets out of hand. And you get into the same issue where information is in silos, information is not available, and so on and so forth. So in my opinion, together Jaspersoft and XTIVIA can bring a lot of value to the table. So one such example is Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. They had, a legacy solution in place that was working out fine, to the extent that it wouldn't, export into Excel. The performance was really poor. The licensing cost was really high. Overall, users were unsatisfied, but they continued to use it for a couple of years because that was the only thing that was available to them. So they essentially, what they required, they knew that they have to have this information in order to run their campaigns more effectively. And so they needed aggregate and detail level views to manage these events effectively, analyze how the teams are doing, against each other. Is it easy to use, and so on and so forth, right? So they looked at Jaspersoft. They were already a customer of Jaspersoft. They brought us in to do additional, data management practices. I believe we ended up combining, 18 or so reports into 3 reports. Very easy to use. All of the functionality, and I think Curtis is going to show us some of these things later on today. Makes it easier. It's they're not necessarily canned reports. There is some interaction for the end users that they can slice and dice information, analyze the information, export to Excel, share it. The context under which they ran the report is stored within the report. Change the data structure, the underlying data structures, made some efficiency gains that way as well. And really, in a matter of 3 months, we finished the project. We gave the reports into the end user's hands. It was overall very well received. They liked the speed, they liked the user interface, they liked how they could interact with the data. And now, in fact, we are doing a kind of sort of phase 2 for the same group, and we're enhancing the quality, adding additional, key performance indicators into the reporting engine, and so on and so forth. So, again, the faster time to market is very, very important. The reporting tools, the dashboards, the analytical tools, and specifically Jasper, is a great way to keep your end users engaged. Because if you're building the data warehouse, it's going to take some time. The data integrations take some time. There are different, in some instances, you don't really have any alternative. But in some instances, what we have found to be successful is, even if you are generating reports on operational data, it's better to get something in the hands of the end users quickly so that they touch and feel it, and they can give us constructive feedback. Because at the end of the day, everything that we are going to do has to lead to some sort of action. If the numbers are not looking right, if the trend is moving downwards, if the trend is going upwards, whatever the case may be, they are all essentially tools that prompt some sort of action. And I think that's really the key. And we believe, in the capabilities of Jaspersoft as a product. So, Mike, would you please go to the next one? And so this one is a different case. This is a fairly, large publishing company. They essentially had a product, a legacy product, built using, I don't know, VB 2.0 or something like that. Very clunky, completely unusable. But the information that the end users get out of this legacy product is invaluable. This is how people make decisions when they decide to buy airplanes or fleets of airplanes, and they want to know everything there is to know about that aircraft or a group of aircrafts. And so they came to us, and this project is still ongoing, scheduled to release later this month. But essentially, they have about 300 or so what I would call facts and dimensional attributes, and they want to give the end users complete control of how they want to view these data. And so one of the key things that Mike had mentioned earlier on in the presentation was the ad hoc capabilities, and I believe we're going to see some of that later today through Curtis's presentation. And that's really, so again, there are sound data management practices underneath. We want to make sure that the data are reliable, that the data can be consumed in a timely fashion, and the user interface on top of it has to be fairly easy to navigate, and the end user should get what they want. And this is a monetized product in the sense that this customer of ours is going to charge their customers a monthly fees or something like that. I don't have all the details, but that's really what they're doing. And so it's not just how to make decisions on a day-to-day basis. Jaspersoft and XTIVIA can help you even monetize some of these things. So that's again, the cost, value and cost, ease of use, agile. Agility is very, very important. We tend to believe that if we keep delivering in 2, maybe 3-month cycles, that customers stay engaged with us. The end users stay engaged with us. They see how things are progressing. They like it. They give us feedback. We correct the course if we need to, and so on and so forth. So, again, it's a great user story that I thought was worth sharing with everybody. So, with that, I guess I will turn it over to Curtis, and he can show us the real deal.
That I can do. Thank you, Mangesh. All right, I'm the presenter. Thank you all, and good morning, everybody. Let's log in to Jasper Report Server. I'm going to log in as a default administrator account. And when I log into the tool, my home page shows several nice features here, some buttons to access quickly some of the features. I want to show you three things today in the last few minutes of our presentation. I want to show you how to create reports, how to assemble some dashboards, and how your end users can interact with those finished reports and dashboards. So let me go first of all to the ad hoc editor. I'm going to go to the Create menu, and let's just pull up the ad hoc editor. First thing it makes me do is select a data source. And we mentioned domains, our metadata layer, a few minutes ago. Mike talked about that about 15 minutes ago. Let me show you a couple of domains. Domain is really an abstraction layer that really hides some of the complexity of the back end. And I can select from any created domains, and it's just a 6-step wizard to create a domain here in the tool. It's a pretty simple process. This one's called Natality Data on Redshift. Natality Data is birth data, and it's called on Redshift because it's actually hosted on our Amazon Web Services Redshift data warehouse. So this particular data set, this domain makes available about 25 or 30 database fields, and I can select that data set. And then the ad hoc editor, if you see down in the far lower left here, I can create either of three kinds of ad hoc views and reports. I'm going to go chart at first. I can change later on the fly, and I'll show you that much as well. And those 25 or 30 fields are made available here in the left panels. I can begin by adding, I can double click, I can drag and drop, I can use the right click context menu to add these fields and measures to my design area, and I'll do that right now. So you saw the HTML5 charting engine just quickly animate that little column. I'm going to create a column chart here initially. And I can start dragging and dropping other things into my design area. And I'm moving rather quickly because we have just a few minutes before the top of the hour. And I can add as many fields and measures as I wish to my design area. And these data level sliders to the right over here, these are called data level sliders. They let me interact or slice and dice the data, in this case by the year of these births over a 40-year period. I can change on the fly the type of chart I'm creating with this chart selector. For example, I might want to go with scatter or a stacked bar or column when I have multiple fields anyway, multiple measures. I might go spline graph or line graph. I can drag more things into the design area. Maybe I'll do it slowly this time. And I can drag or drop or double click or use my right click context menu to really interact with this tool. Now I'm creating an ad hoc view, and it's called an ad hoc view because I'm really exploring, I'm analyzing my data here on the fly. I'm trying to shape this chart to tell a story to those who need to make better business decisions. All right, this is perhaps I have a meeting next week with my e-staff, and they need to know what's going on with this birth data so we can market our goods and services to these mothers, these young mothers across the country. So I'm exploring. This is an analysis tool. It really is a real-time analysis tool that we're providing to you here. We call it the ad hoc report designer or the ad hoc editor. I can create filters on the fly. This is part of the in-memory engine that Mike was talking about. I can create any number of filters, whether the field is in the report already or not in the ad hoc view. This one happens to be in the view, so I'm going to interact with some data that's already exhibited in the ad hoc view. This is the mother's age field. And I can click on some values here and generate a filter really quickly to remove some of the trees from the forest, if you will, and really let me see what I'm trying to see. So again, I want to tell a story that shapes and makes this chart have high impact, right? So through filtering, if it was a table report, I could sort my columns, I could filter my columns. If it's a crosstab, I can pivot the table so that it looks the way I want and presents the information in just the fashion I need. And when I'm done, when I have a story told that I need, I can export this in any number of formats from PDF on down. I can save my work here. I can save this ad hoc view and create a report from it. Now remember, it's called a view initially. This initial phase is called a view because I'm really viewing my data, my underlying data, and I'm creating a story that I can then export or save as a report as well. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to save this simple little ad hoc chart view as a report as well. In this case, I'll keep them both in the same folder. I haven't showed off the folder tree yet. So press the Save button, and now my ad hoc editor is spinning out these two different resources to my repository database. Let's look at that. So when I view repository, and we ship a PostgreSQL database with the product in which you can store all of your reporting resources. Reports, images, data sources, input controls, dashboards, all those things can live here in this repository database, and they're managed through this folder tree. And you can delete and add your own folders to match your own business needs, of course. So here's my view and report. If I click on to execute the view, I'm going back into the ad hoc editor, where I can continue adding, removing fields, filtering, and so forth. If I click on the view, I look at the view in what we call the interactive report viewer. And that lets me, as the end user, view this report based on my access permissions, of course. I can access this report. I can execute it here in the interactive viewer, in which case I don't have access to those fields and measures. I can't add any fields or delete fields from the report. I can't create more filters, but I can interact with the chart and select my own kind if I want to from those 25 different kinds of charts that we make available to you. 25 different visualization tools there in the ad hoc editor. Now that filter is gone, but it got turned into an input control by the server. The server does that for me. So I can interact as the end user with this finished report. And I can select my own age groups, for example, and further shape my own representation of this report, and then I can save it as my own version of the report, change the name, put it in my own folder if I want to. So it's all about self-service, ladies and gentlemen. We're offering you the chance to let your end users self-serve. They can create their own reports if they want to. They can interact with finished reports if their access permissions grant them access to those reports, and they can continue to explore data that way right here in the interactive viewer. The HTML5 charting engine lets me click to hide certain, in this case, certain lines of the graph if I want to. See how I'm clicking down below in the legend here? It's a very powerful charting engine that brings you these visualizations. I can create table and crosstab reports all from the ad hoc editor. So creating reports with the ad hoc editor, viewing them here in the interactive viewer, but maybe I want to assemble a dashboard as well. Maybe I want to take my finished reports and put several of them into a dashboard. So let me show you the dashboard designer. Again, the create menu. And this is also a drag and drop, double click kind of tool that gives me access to all those reports I may have created. So let me just show you some of the reports that are available here on my system. And by the way, this is on my own little laptop here. This is my own installation. And I can drag and drop or double click some of these reports and add them to, I'm just going to make this up, I don't know, some of these are charts, some of these are table reports. So the query goes out and brings back the information right here in the dashboard designer. And this is one of the features made available through this browser app called Jasper Report Server. You saw the ad hoc editor, you saw the interactive report viewer, and I showed you that page where we can manage our resources in the repository with that folder tree. These are all just some of the features that are provided through this Jasper Report Server. In this case, I have a dashboard designer. I can drag and drop and shape my reports. And I'm not going to take more time here, but you can see how I can drag and drop as many reports as I want to, side by side, under each other, 4, 5, 6 different reports, as long as they're small enough so they fit cohesively and in a coherent manner here. I can create dashboards in this manner in a simple drag and drop, double click kind of interface. Okay. When I've created those when I've got my reports here, I can save the dashboard to my repository, just like you saw the ad hoc report being saved to the repository. And then I can go back to the repository view, or maybe I want to go to the library page and view all my reports and dashboards to which I have access permissions. Or perhaps I want to go and view under search results. And I'm just showing off some of the features here. I can click and look at, for example, dashboards. I can select the dashboard I just created, for example. I can click to execute it right here in the application. And maybe one or more of those reports are parameterized to accept input control values from the end user. Well, if one or more of those reports is parameterized, then so too is the dashboard. And I can interact with those input controls here. Some dashboards have just one or two reports, some have many. Let's look at one more, and then I'll pretty much be done with my 10-minute tour here of the product line, and we'll pass it back for some question and answers. So again, a brief tour of the ad hoc report designer and all its features. I showed you just a few, the interactive report viewer and the dashboard designer, in this case with input controls and so forth. So very professional dashboard designer, very quick and easy to create dashboards, very easy and quick to access these different functionalities right here from the tool, given the right permissions. I can, as the default administrator, I can administer the tool. I can create users and roles and tenants, which we call organizations, for you multi-tenant SaaS providers, for example. I can create all kinds of facilities right here from the home page or from the menus. Okay, just a quick blast, a 10-15-minute blast of some of the features we offer. Can I continue, or should I hand off for QA? Back to Ray, perhaps.
We're actually good. We just have a couple questions at this point, so why don't we keep going? We'll still have a few minutes to address those questions.
Okay, so certainly. So I showed you the library page. Under View, the repository, as the default administrator, or as the super user even, which is the system administrator, I can have access to, for example, I have the power, the authority to affect access permissions to all my resources in the repository. So I can right-click, as the administrator now, I can right-click on a folder, pull up the permissions window, for example, and I can grant different levels of access to the different roles I've created, or even to specific users, to different user accounts. Well, because I may have dozens of different users attached to a certain role, and then I assign permissions to that role. But if one of my users needs specifically different kinds of access, I can pull up the username right here, and I can give that person specific access beyond whatever their role is. So two ways to manage access: through my roles, and I may have many users assigned to each of these roles, or to specific users. And that's on a folder-by-folder basis. But recognize access permissions propagate down into the folder. So if I assign permissions to this folder, like the reports folder, for example, they propagate down automatically and control access to all the subfolders and the content in them, unless I come down here and assign specific permissions to a subfolder, which I certainly can do. All right, so a little bit about access. I call that the second layer of security. The first layer of security in the tool is authentication, how I log in, my login and password, and perhaps my organization name if I have a multi-tenant environment. Second layer of security is access permissions. Domains, and please cut me off, Ray, when you're ready. Domains, the last thing I want to talk about, are another powerful layer of security. We talked about how Mike mentioned, and I just briefly mentioned, how domains are a metadata layer, a abstraction of what can be a very complex back-end arrangement with different databases. You heard Mike talk about virtual data sources, and dozens of tables, and hundreds of fields. Well, the six-step domain designer, a little wizard, if you will, in which I design my domains, lets me specify things like left or right or outer or inner joins. I can create custom fields. I can create derived tables, custom queries, all kinds of fancy stuff. One of the things I can do on this domain is add a security file. a simple XML file that specifies, for example, data level security. So 2 or more users can access the same report, for example. They may see very different content in that report because you may see you may see some columns or rows that I don't have access to based on my permissions. I may see rows or columns that you don't see because the security file attached to this domain from which that report was created specifies who can see what. That's data level security, a very strong feature, a very powerful component of the domain concept and a very large part of this tool, the Jaspersoft server. Summarizing, the Jaspersoft server provides a number of features of interest to you. One is the ad hoc report designer, the ad hoc editor. One is the dashboard designer. 2 is dashboard. 3 are domains, that metadata layer, that abstraction layer that makes simple, that kind of beautifies the end user experience in the ad hoc editor, hiding the end users from all that back-end complexity, and another layer of security. 4 would be the scheduling tool. So I can, let me see if I can do this now, right-click, and I can schedule. I'm using the right-click context menu. I can right-click and schedule a report to run any kind of recurring base I want to. And I'm running, I got 5 minutes left. I think we should probably call it quits, but the scheduling tool is very powerful. It lets me schedule reports to run on a one-off basis, on a recurring basis. I can create a schedule for this report. It's a little 3-step wizard specifying when it should run, what kind of output it should generate, PDF, HTML, comma-separated value, spreadsheet, what have you. Again, the scheduler is one of the many features provided by the tool. Okay.
And Curtis, I am going to jump in. We have several questions that have rolled in. I think you have access to view the questions, and in their reading loss, you may be able to combine a couple of them or get to a couple of them fairly quickly. Do you see those, Curtis?
I see a chat window. Do I see a questions panel?
I'll go ahead and read them off. Carla has 3 questions here. First of all, can you access the SQL from ad hoc?
You can view the query. You cannot edit the query. You can, from the ad hoc report designer, you can view the query that the domain generates, as I recall, but you can't actually interact with it. And if I'm wrong, if Mike wants to jump in, that's my memory. That's what I recall, yes. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to kind of do rapid fire here, Curtis.
Yeah.
To Tina, will this pull data from Microsoft Jet database as a source?
I don't know Microsoft Jet. Can anybody else comment on that?
I can't. I don't know that, but I would imagine we could probably, whether we connect to it out of the box is probably not possible, but I'm pretty sure through a regular engagement with whether it's our PS team or XTIVIA, we can access that source.
Yeah, we connect any JDBC or JNDI data source to go. Yeah.
Right. I think the JET is the underlying engine for Access, or at least that's how I remember it. So.
Yeah, and I have read. I know that we do. Some of our one-offs have been interacting with Access, but it's not one of that we generally see too often. But yeah, I can certainly, if you choose to email me or contact the Ray or somebody, and they can come to me, I can do more homework and find a better answer for you if you wish.
Great. I think this is a quick one. Can we add the ad hoc view to the dashboard?
Ad hoc reports can be added to dashboards, absolutely. We provide 2 tools to create reports. You saw one of them today, the ad hoc report designer. Either can be added to dashboards, yes.
Okay, let me see. We have a bunch coming in now. What level of skill set is needed for domain building for users?
Oh, gee, let me see. I have a mouse and cursor. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to give it a save location. The short answer is, if you're a mouse and cursor kind of person, and you may need you might take advantage of any kind of SQL or DBA skills you have. They certainly can take advantage of more of these 6 steps, because some of these 6 steps ask you to. Let me just do this real quickly here. Give me about 30 seconds. If this will work, let's try this one. I'm just making this up as I go. Here we go. So I can take advantage of my SQL skills in order to create different kinds of joins in the join tab. If I know how to write a query, I can create derived tables. These are totally optional steps. These are optional. You don't need to create derived tables. You don't need to create calculated fields. You don't need to create any filters. But they're all easy to do in the GUI here. They're all very just drag and drop kind of a thing here. There's a lot of information in our docs in the, I want to say the admin guide. Does that sound right, Mike? The Jasperport Server admin guide teaches you all about how to create domains. It's not complex at all. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, so I think we got answers to at least one question each from Tina, Carla, Dave, Lee, and thank you all for that. Mike, I'm going to go to you, and I think we'll switch the screen back over to you. You can put up that last page and just on how folks can contact us. But while we're doing that, from the beginning of the presentation, we had a question about Amazon, and I don't know if this would be a quick answer or a long one, Mike, but can you touch more on how Amazon is using the services?
Yeah, so our commercial server is available on the Amazon Marketplace. And so what that means is you can, if you ever use the Amazon Marketplace, you simply register to use that product. You pay for it by the hour. So it's basically under $1 an hour. It depends on the size of the machine that you want to use on Amazon. The beauty of that environment is it can connect to Amazon data right out of the box. There's already a wizard built in. So if your data is already up there, it's really, really swift and clean to use. But your data doesn't have to be. It can be anywhere. You can connect to it behind your firewall, et cetera. And then it's unlimited in terms of users, data. It's just pay by the hour. And you can use it for an hour or for months. It doesn't matter. And again, that's at the Amazon Marketplace.
Great. Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Curtis. I'm going to wrap up fairly quickly here. I do want to point out the contact information. Actually, before I do that, I just want to let those who ask questions, and there's more that we just couldn't get to, we will follow up with you. Somebody will follow up via email, which we have because of your registration. So thank you for the questions. Thanks for being patient with us as we get back to those. Again, we'll have the recording of this available within about 24 hours. If you would like to contact us, whether you had a question or not, and just have any questions you want to get to us directly or you need help with something, info@xtivia.com or sales@jaspersoft.com. You see the Twitter handles there. Phone numbers for both Jaspersoft and XTIVIA, and then jaspersoft.com, xtivia.com, and xtivia.com will be where the recording of the webinar will live and be available tomorrow. So again, Curtis and Mike, thank you. Mayesh, thanks for helping put this together. And I'm just going to say goodbye for all of us, and we look forward to having you back for our next webinar. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.